I'd like to introduce you to Dan Smith. He's an environmental professional with over 30 years of experience. He's currently working for the Surface Water Management Department at Federal Way. So please help me welcome Dan Smith.
Okay, thanks, Shiloh. I was kind of getting ready this morning, and my 10-year-old son came downstairs and saw me put my tie on and everything, and he said, "Hey, Dad, what's your presentation going to be?" And I thought for a minute, and I thought, I think I'm going to lie to him and tell him it's like quantum physics or something. But then I said, okay, well, it's trash compactors and dumpsters. And he said, "Do they stink?" And I said, "Yeah, you know." And he said, "You have to look in there once in a while?" I said, "Yeah." So you guys are going to learn what he isn't going to learn. And it's not a real cool topic, but I think I can put a little, entertain you a little bit, and more importantly, give you a little, be informative about what we're learning up in Federal Way. So trash compactors and dumpsters, they're hidden, they're hiding in these places that nobody wants to go to. They're at the bottom of a ramp. They often have a fence around them. You'll find them in apartment complexes and food establishments. And, nobody wants to go in there. I think health department folks and solid waste folks are kind of allergic to these areas. They just ignore them. They don't, out of sight, out of mind. But unfortunately, they are a big source of where you're going to find, trash and liquid wastes that get into the stormwater system, and that's why we're here to talk about this. So, and then, they always have that little pesky drain that's near there. It's, you may have to squat down and poke around and look for these things, but, that's where the pollution is going to enter and get into the stormwater system. In Federal Way, we did have a few accomplishments years ago, and one was at Red Robin, where we investigated a dumpster area and we had them put it in a covered area and drained the sanitary. And then at Red Lobster, they put some money into repaving the slab here and plumbing it to sanitary. But I don't know what happened in the interim period, but in around 2012, we really hit upon this issue. And during two different commercial site inspections, there were some significant pollution that we found that was coming off of two different trash compactors, two different areas. And so through this prolonged water quality enforcement effort, we kind of looked at it and found out that through the investigation that this was bigger than what we thought, and then that's what kind of kicked off this whole process that I'm going to talk about. So by 2013, I assembled a list of all the trash compactors in the city of Federal Way from our solid waste folks. So there was about 78 total. And I started focusing on the restaurants, grocery stores, apartments, and retail sites that had these compactors. And I found out that over 20 of them, this was in a 2-month period in late in summer in 2013, that over 20 of them were leaking, and they're actively leaking. And so that was 25% of the ones I went out and looked at had a problem, which is not really not real good. So we found a whole bunch of discharges. We had apartment complexes. You have oil that can leak out of the connections there, hydraulic oil. There was a Walmart that was leaking. More apartment complexes, Fred Meyer. And then you've got these apartment complexes where they try to keep the area real clean, and the guys are instructed to go out there and wash it away. And I did a little surveillance here, and they were, after this, back at the office, they were calling me Sneaky Dan because I was kind of like hiding out in my car and taking pictures of people, but you got to do what you got to do, right? So case study number 1, Club Palisades apartment. It's the largest apartment complex in Federal Way. There's 750 units in 2012. So this was one of the ones that was initially discovered in 2012. So I initiated the enforcement action. They cleaned, we required them to clean the system. They said they'd repair the compactor, and then they said, we require them to implement some BMPs, and they came back to me and they said, well, hey, we got an idea. We got too much liquid coming into the trash compactor. That's why it's leaking out. So we collect the trash throughout the complex from these totes, which you can see that are all uncovered, and they're, rainwater's getting in there, and they go, what we'll do is we'll drill holes in the side of them, and that'll take care of it. And I said, no, you can't do that. But, so this enforcement action at Club Palisades has even continued to today. The first thing you got to realize, and I'm kind of getting to be an expert about these trash compactors, is that there's two different types. There's one called a stationary compactor, and this is the one that was at Club Palisades. This part of the unit stays and it's bolted to the ground, and they put the trash in there and it gets rammed up into the unit and this other unit, and this unit gets taken off site. But you have this connection here that's not leak tight, and these things are really for dry waste, like cardboard and things like that, not for wet waste. So apartment complexes, you're going to get it's just regular solid waste that's generated by multifamily units, and you're going to have a component in there that's going to be liquid. And if it's liquid, it's going to come out. So these are the two different type of compactors you got to be familiar with. You got the stationary compactor that I just talked about, where that unit gets pulled off site and that unit stays there, but it's for dry waste. What you need at apartment complexes and restaurants and food establishments are self-contained units, and they're for wet waste. So Club Palisades this past summer put in, after I've hounded them for 2 years, finally they came around and they put in a self-contained unit. But when I discovered that when they took it off site, you can see that, lo and behold, that thing is leaking. So there are issues with these type of compactors. If there's a lot of liquid, when they tilt it up and pull it onto the truck, it can leak out. So really, you'll learn that this problem may never go away. So case study number 2 was H-Mart. It's a large Asian grocery store in Federal Way, and then so it was triggered by a 2012 commercial inspection. They initially had a 30-yard dumpster here. It was open at the top, and that's how they were managing the waste in the grocery store. And those things aren't leak tight, so you had this significant amount of waste that was coming out. And this was a compost compactor that was next to it. So we told them that they had to replace this with the trash compactor. They did. They went through the routine of cleaning the system out. And then they submitted a written BMP plan to me that they said that they were going to start kind of keeping track of not putting so much liquid waste in there. But this has been going on for years now. Both compactors continue to leak, and you have all this numerous things that can go wrong. You get garbage stuck between the seal and the structure. You get they took the compactor out and they welded it. The turnbuckle wasn't tightened. They were trying to save money by delaying the pickup, so this liquid waste would accumulate, and you would look inside there, and you would just see tons of liquid waste. So it just continued. Enforcement has continued till today. And then one day they left the drain valve open, and then they worked on the compost compactor, and they put a dumpster there, but then they had to seal that because they knew we were coming around. I mean, I didn't let up. We were just pounding them, and we were out there every day. The problem here's a bird's eye view of H-Mart. Here's where the compactors are located at the northwest corner of the building. It's the waste. It collects inside the on-site sewer system, and then it flows out here into our MS4, and then it goes, here's the receiving body, and that's Easter Lake. It's a private lake, but this past summer we had an algae bloom, and It was a toxic algae bloom. So it's a classic example of what these type of wastes, you know, I know if you grind up a bunch of fish and bok choy and vegetables and things like that, that's, you know, great nutrients for algae. So it shows the connection between illicit discharges and immediate impacts to water bodies and public health. So we went through, with H-Mart, they've gone through 5 notices of violation. They cleaned the system and they've spent over $2,000. We were successful to date in collecting $1,400 in fines through our SWIM enforcement process, and they're still trying to correct it. The latest news is that they couldn't connect it into sanitary yet because it's really kind of onerous. They either have to go all the way on the other side of the building to the side sewer or go across 312th Street to connect through a right-of-way. And so their idea is to open that drain on the compactors, fill buckets every now and then with liquid, and haul it inside. And the health department, I'm putting the heat on the health department to say, you know, are you guys really okay with that? And our solid waste guys, because their code, the solid waste code in your city or county, they should step up to the plate because there's a whole lot of issues with the management of solid waste. So we have a whole lot of different entities that can work together to solve this. But a lot of people are running away from it, like I said. So, you know, our IDDE compliance steps is similar to any other municipality. MS4 is that we immediately have them clean it up. We have them remove the waste from the system. We have them implement, you know, BMPs that we think are going to fix the problem. We have them submit a written action plan so that it's something's in writing, so I can go back to them and say, hey, you know, you promised that you were going to do this or that, and then we just continue. It's a continued process. So how did those 20 leakers fare? Well, 8 compactors, and this is huge. Over the last 12 months, through our process, they've been replaced, and that's not a small expense. $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for these things. And what's amazing is that not a whimper has even reached. You know, they just complied with it, and it all goes back to having, you know, great evidence, documentation, kind of putting them in a corner to make sure that they know that they need to comply. So they coughed up the money to put these compactors in. And we're continuing to monitor these, and none of them have been tied into sanitary yet, which is a goal that I'll talk about in a minute. So about a year ago, I presented this at the APWA Stormwater's meeting here in Western Washington. And before we did that, we'd sent out a query of the different stormwater management programs, and we asked them, what are you doing about compactors and dumpsters? And it ranged from, we don't have a problem, or we don't know anything about that, and all the way down the line to corrective action letters have resulted in 100% compliance, which I find that a little hard to believe. But it just shows you the range of what the different municipalities are dealing with this problem. Let's talk a little bit about dumpsters. Look out for splits. They're gonna, you know, these things aren't, just because they're made of steel, they aren't gonna be, they aren't gonna have a failure. You find these gouges in there. Actually, this is crazy. We find this machine hold area in here, and here's your stormwater catch basin. And then there's liquid in there, so when this fills up, that's just going to run right out of there. And here's a little case study on dumpsters. We were looking at this dumpster for a while this past summer, and it's at a kind of a crummy little nightclub where they're throwing the next day they're throwing their half-empty beer bottles in there, and it just looked like to me that there was they just weren't hitting the hole there. And it was just leaking out, and it was leaking out over time, little by little, but impacting the stormwater system significantly, until one day I kind of like squatted down and looked, and there's a little tiny hole there. So that's where it was coming from. So like I told my son, I did do some dumpster diving on this project. And when you looked inside, there's a scum line that came up right to that little hole. So all the accumulation of liquid that was in there. And the other thing, you notice that the lid is open and it's introducing rainwater. But, you know, these are just continual discharges into our stormwater systems. So what we have worked with Waste Management, who is the contracted firm that does the work in the city of Federal Way, they have to provide a leak-tight container. So we keep them on that obligation. And they have to notify us when a driver observes leakage. So they're getting better at that. They're letting us know when their driver sees leakage. And so we worked up this flow chart for them, and we said, okay, well, you know, you have certain contract requirements, so if we find a discharge that was in a system like the one I just showed you, and it was a result of your compactor dumpster leaking, you're going to clean it up. And they said, okay, we'll do that the first time, we'll clean it up, but it's really it may be a result of these folks putting liquid waste into these units, which they're not supposed to. So it's a solid waste management issue. So we're working with Waste Management to help us out on this. Here's a word about totes. These are the things in the apartment complex where it makes it more efficient for them to collect the garbage and bring it to the dumpster. So you can look for these rusted holes, and here's one where they've got a hole in the bottom. It's just, if I wouldn't have sent our $15 an hour technician out, then I would never have known that was there. But it's really cool to know that these things are out there. And then here's one where we've got the machined holes in the side on these totes. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is start looking at these, maybe even collecting a sample of the leachate that comes out of there. Well, first and foremost, get them to plug these up, but I want to kind of collect some information that will show folks that this stuff is bad, and you can't just trail that stuff all over an apartment complex because it's going to get into the stormwater system. So you need to work with your solid waste management people because, you know, they need to make aware that their solid waste should go to the landfill and their liquid waste should go to the sanitary system. It shouldn't go to our stormwater system. That's why we're here. You know, keep your stuff in your place, and we'll take care of our stuff. Can your solid waste folks enforce their code? They should have something in their code that refers to public nuisances, that the containers need to be watertight, and that they have to have a tight-fitting cover. So we've been putting heat on our solid waste folks to get the word out to their customers that this needs to be done. Look at your service provider contract. That's the waste management thing. Is there a requirement for them to notify you? And where does public health fit into this in compliance? They have solid waste handling standards, and then, you know, that's linked to threats to human health and the environment. So get them engaged. And I've had a little bit of luck with King County finding the right guy that I can talk to when we have these issues. So some of the lessons learned. Obtain an inventory of your compactor sites. You know, that's important. Get to know where they are. Have your commercial site inspectors know where those are on a map. And the timing is important. On a day like today, you're not going to find it. It's just going to be washed away. I found in the summertime, that's where you're going to see this stuff. And the age of the equipment should be tracked. You know, get rid of those dinosaurs out there. Have them invest their money into these water quality improvements. And operations and maintenance is critical. There's so many human error elements in this, it's unbelievable. So it just requires that you continue to monitor this stuff. Are these inevitably going to leak? Well, we've learned that the volume of liquid generated and the frequency of pickup is critical. And then even when these units are picked up, and this should really be including the stationary compactors, they'll often leak because when they get tilted up and hauled off site, the liquid level rises above this overflow area and it's going to come out. So our message to you folks, for you permittees that may be unaware of the compactor problem, compactor pollution problem or dumpster problem, know that it exists. And for those that have already begun tackling this issue, know that despite your best efforts, that the problem may not go away until maybe all of these sites are connected to sanitary in some fashion. So our verdict is it's low-hanging fruit. It may be putrid and stinky and rotten, but it's something that it's there. I know it's there. If you look, you'll find it. So you can make an improvement in your program by going after these things. So these are the final things to consider. Public education alone will not eliminate the discharges. So, sending out a flyer to these folks and telling them to be good isn't going to work. Annual commercial site inspections are not going to take care of the problem either. That's when you have, one guy or two guys going out and they go to one site per year, and the odds of you finding a problem at that point are very slim. So get to know where they are and make continual efforts to get out there and check it out. In many cases, connecting the sanitary seems to be the only foolproof option that are going to eliminate these discharges. And then we're looking at possible revisions to our swim code. We've had kind of a turnover in the upper management and public works, and it's kind of getting put off on the back burner, but the effort that I've been doing is more or less documenting, showing that it's an issue, showing it's a problem, and that's where we are now. That hopefully in the future, if we all get on the same track, that we can recognize that, and I think they're doing it in California, that's, maybe new sites can certainly be plumbed into sanitary where you have a cover or of some sort, or existing sites need to be retrofitted to get rid of this pollution issue. So that's all I have.